Talk a little bit about how TuitionFit got started. What issue is TuitionFit trying to solve?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I saw in my years in higher education was, families are trying to decide a series of decisions throughout that process. You start with, I don't know, 4,500 colleges and universities around the country. And then you're deciding, okay, which ones am I going to look more seriously at? And very quickly you're down to, maybe there's 100 or so, and you couldn't name them, but you sort of know, I want to stay in the Midwest and I want to go to a small college, let's just say. And there's hundreds of small colleges in the Midwest. So then it's, well, which ones? Well, I want, this major, and I want it to be within so many miles of home or so many hours drive. You do whatever you're going to do. Maybe it's the other way around. It's got to be at least 5 hours away, because if mom and dad are coming, I got to have time to clean my room. Whatever the logic here is. But at each of those stages, what was happening for the public was they knew that it's expensive, and they knew that it's a risky calculus, because if you get it wrong, your family life could be permanently altered by the kind of debt you might end up in, right? So from the very beginning of the process, the family's saying, look, I only want to look at schools that I'm ultimately going to be able to afford. And at those earlier stages of the process, there's no good data that really tells you, okay, that's a school that I can afford, that's a school I can't afford, because the difference between the sticker price and the actual price is tens of thousands of dollars. And depending on the school that you actually apply to, your price could be somewhere on either side of that average, tens of thousands of dollars on either side of that average, and you just don't know. So the public was incredibly frustrated by this. And it just seemed to me that it was time to say, look, we all have individual slices of the data. High school seniors get award letters every year, and in those award letters are the actual prices they're getting. I know from my work in higher ed that setting price is actually a much more straightforward process than the whole notion of applications and admission. So if we know how to colleges set their prices, we get that information from a student, that award letter from the student, zoom that out by a couple of thousand, and then you've got essentially a Kelley Blue Book for college prices. So that's what we did, was just say, let's create a tool that gives the public information and power to be an engaged and informed consumer with real agency, so that you can find the colleges that you can afford, and you don't miss anybody way early in the process. It's overwhelming, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I go to Walmart or Target and you just need a pair of socks, and there's a giant wall of socks.
Yeah.
And this is called choice overload. This is a very typical thing that psychologists study all the time. And when people get in that position, you just grab the first socks you see and get out of there, because it's a stressful thing. Or you do what I do and wear sandals for 9 months, right? Like, you just like, I'm out. Like, I don't even want to. And that's the way that lots of families engage the college search, because they've been getting brochures for 2 years, and they look at those brochures and go, I can't tell the difference. I don't know which one's which. They all have a history major. Like, how can I, like, yeah, there's a kid sitting on a bench happily, and there's another student in a sports team. Everybody's got that. Like, I don't know. So
Yeah.
price becomes a real important metric to start to narrow your choices by, and there's no way to do that. So that's why we built what we built.
I found it interesting too, like there's an inequality issue too. I guess I forgot, it does cost money to apply for college, right? So if you've got a lower income family, they might apply to what, 3 to 5 schools, where if you have a higher income family, they can pay for, the 50 to 100 applications to these schools to see what comes back, right? And so
Right.
You're also kind of helping balance that equation as well.
Yeah, it's really true. There's so many things embedded into this system that they sort of look like, nothing against old golf country clubs, but it sort of looks like an application to place to a country club, that if you have applied, it's a given that you can afford it, right? Like, if you're applying to a real selective club, just the fact that to apply and that you've been invited money's not an issue. But that's not the case for college, and that's not the case for lots of people. So you're right. The reason that students apply to lots of schools is one, that they have the money to be able to do that, because college applications are now typically $75 or $100. And it usually makes sense to go visit that campus, and that's not cheap.
Yeah.
Gas, take the time off from work. So, it's not inexpensive to do this stuff. The whole idea here is it does provide some equality, equalizing these gaps, while at the same time empowering the whole buyer side of this transaction to start to bring the power that they should have to this marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Supply and demand stuff, again, Econ 101, right? Like, if there's way more supply than there is demand, prices should be coming down.
Mm-hmm.
Prices haven't been coming down, and there's been a glut of supply. Well, why? Because the process that we have always abided by holds back price until the very end, and so people make decisions really based on emotion without knowing what they're getting themselves into. And then at the end of it, way too often families are in a position where they end up borrowing more than they really had planned on, or paying more than they wanted to pay, because they think, I got three prices sitting in front of me, and those are my only choices, so I guess I'm stuck with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.